Tres, dos, uno, go.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Triad of the Force podcast, a podcast from three Puerto Rican friends coming together to do deep dives into Star Wars and other nerd-related media. Today is one of those lucky days where we actually talk about other nerd-related media. And we're going to talk about finally Spider-Man No Way Home with who else but like our basically fourth unofficial Triad of the Force member, Josie. Josie, welcome back.
Hi, thanks for having me here again. Always fun being on the Triad of the Force.
It's always great having you back. Spicy takes. I mean, this is the third time you've been with us, and each time is better than the last one. I think you're the guest we've had the most at this point. So it's very good to have
you.
We can't move forward, though, without catching up a little bit and congratulating you. We saw the other day that you have the body power right now and achieved Rotten Tomatoes status. Congratulations on that. How does that feel?
Thank you. It feels powerful because I finally got to do what I wanted to do for a while, which was give Eternals a fresh rating.
Bring it up to like
el porcentaje no subió, but I did my part. I put my little grain of sand.
Every vote counts. Every vote counts. Go vote, people. Don't sleep on the 2022 election. Exactly. Just because we couldn't get Eternals to be certified fresh doesn't mean you should not vote in the midterms.
Which, just for people, if you haven't seen it, the DVD is out. Also, it is on Disney Plus. So go watch some cinema. And if you don't agree with me, please don't let me know. I'll feel very sad because I like this film.
If you disagree with us, we'll block and we'll mute you because we're all about
report
safe spaces. So what does that mean? What does that mean for you now that in terms of like your career and being Rotten Tomatoes certified? What's next? Because we know you're in film posters and Premezcla and a bunch of like cool websites for like movie criticism. So, now that you're, legit, so to speak, with
I'm like,
the Rotten Tomatoes, what's next? What's next?
I don't know what's happening, but I feel very grateful because things are moving in a good direction. I'm writing now also for Todas PR, which is a Puerto Rican outlet, which makes me very happy because I also get to give back home as well. And writing in Spanish, which is not my strong suit, because I grew up in Puerto Rico, so I viví en Puerto Rico, but I went to an English school, so English kind of like my language was colonized, so it happens. Again, Puerto Rico, U.S. territory, colony, so. Yeah,
crypto bros, get out.
Yes, so it makes me very happy to finally get to practice writing critically in Spanish again. And also just the Rotten Tomatoes thing was something I applied on a whim, which I genuinely wanted, but I was prepared for the rejection because everyone was like, oh yeah, I've applied it 5 times and I still haven't gotten it. So I'm seriously not trying to flex. This is my first time applying.
flex,
and I thought I was gonna get rejected. I was ready for it, but I was like, I'm still gonna try. And then I got approved, and I was like, what's happening? And at first, that was like the main thing, but then people were telling me que de la isla específicamente, apparently me and someone else were the first female critics to get Rotten Tomatoes approved.
Wow, that's even a big deal.
What?
Super congratulations now.
It's like
it's a sad state of affairs, but congrats.
Porque it's like you feel happy and proud, but also why are we the first? Like great male critics in La Isla, que I really admire, but also más mujeres. Let's go.
Do you think that's more of a thing because they're not like applying for these criticism critic roles, or because they're just getting rejected, or it's just because they're in the island, there's like some passive discrimination?
I think there's a little bit of everything, that because I remember for when I first started with film posters, it was very difficult for us because we are 3 women and 1 man, and still they wouldn't take us seriously. And we did notice there was a lot of gatekeeping. There's no other way to say it. And eventually started infiltrating those spaces, and more people have started doing it. A friend of mine, my co-host from Film Talk, Captain Meléndez on Twitter, she just started going to screenings. So it takes a little bit longer for female critics to get in for some reason, and I don't know why. I mean, there's probably there's an easy way to say that, to say it.
Institutionalized.
Right.
So,
And I imagine that it's worse being not just being a woman, but then being a woman of color. That makes it even more complicated, I would imagine, because nothing is easy, right? When you're a minority and then a minority within that minority.
especialmente en la isla, que it's kind of
Right.
sad because most of the people that have those positions are also women. So it's upsetting that we don't support each other, but hopefully that is changing. But there's also the aspect that there aren't that many resources for critics in la isla, obviamente. So most of the people that do get those opportunities are like involved with network television or the radio. So people like us that do this on the internet, it's a little bit more difficult. Even though our outreach is bigger, we are not limited to just like local presence in la isla. So it's just about broadening the perspective, but we're going up.
Yes, that's the only direction we should be going in. And again, congratulations. But now, before we get like into this whole Spider-Man thing, you're hit like on the whole representation conversation, which is kind of a big deal for us as well, because being a Puerto Rican podcast, we can't help but always talk about representation. So one of those things that I find interesting about what you just said is that it makes me wonder then if there's gatekeeping on both sides, right? Because there's gatekeeping like in mainstream critics circles in the US, right? And like they're discriminating against like people of color and women and all that stuff because that's institutional, right? And in those circles. But I also wonder, like within the stuff that's going on in Puerto Rico, if there's also like a gatekeeping in the other direction, where it's just like if you're a Puerto Rican that's doing that work in the States, if you're kind of kept away from like the internal circles, right, in Puerto Rico of criticism. Is that a thing that happens? Because I would suspect that there's a lot of infighting between the Puerto Rican groups because that's how we are.
Yeah, I have noticed that ever since I moved to New York, getting more opportunities, I've gotten more respect from my colleagues back home. So there is a little bit of that. Porque es que también en Puerto Rico tenemos esa mentalidad that people that make it out of the island deserve more respect than people that make it in the island.
Right.
And then you come back and you're like, una superestrella. And it's like, but we were doing that same thing back home. We just left. And now like it hasn't changed. We're still the same person. So it just also, that would be getting into politics because it just also talks about the mentality that we have back home about admiring everything that isn't local. When again, like, look at this badass group we have right here. Somos producto de la isla. Like there's so much talent.
It is true. It's that it's probably that colonial thinking. Like they're better because which is so sad.
But it's interesting because I see it both ways, right? I see that that perspective of being from the island, like thinking that you made it when you're out there instead of like making it within. But I also see like there's discrimination a lot from us. Oh, you abandoned us. So like you're like now we kind of like nadie es profeta en su tierra type of thing. No one's a prophet in their own land type of thing. You left us, and now you're not. You're making it, but now you're not part of the in group. You're not from here nor from there. So like I don't know. It's weird. I think it's like you said. It's a lot of like internal politics and stuff, and especially with the charged climate that we have now with all the NFT and crypto bros and all the displacement and stuff. Like we can't like even begin to like understand the psychological mess that is the Puerto Rican consciousness, right? Because it's so fractured and so fragile right now that it's very difficult to understand. Well, I mean, I didn't mean to want to get into that rabbit hole again.
No, I mean, it's always a good conversation to have, regardless of what we're discussing, because I mean, it does infiltrate our perspective on so many different things. And again, we're discussing media and films through our perspective, so it's a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it connects to Spider-Man because they're also fracturing and breaking apart their own reality.
Amen.
Just as we are breaking apart our own realities.
Bringing it back. I love that. Yeah, we'll get to Peter's reality fractioning. But we need definitely more critics that are, people of color and women to come into the fold so that we can move that ticker on Rotten Tomatoes into the certified for Eternals. That movie deserves a lot more respect. So please come.
Again, woman of color directing, and look at how it was treated.
Not just women of color directing, but also like an extremely diverse cast with the first like a lot of these Marvel movies and Disney movies are just like, oh look, there's a gay character in here, but always it's kind of like a background character for half a second doing something that could just be like, that doesn't mean nothing. This movie actually had legit gay character with a partner and like on screen, and like no one talked about it.
It wasn't pandering like usually, because people were nervous. We're like, another Disney queer baity thing. But no, it was very respectful. And like it didn't feel forced. And especially like Brian Tyree Henry is just such a good actor. And like both of them like had really good chemistry for the small amount of time they were together. And it was just so nice.
But that's the great thing about it. It wasn't it was just a natural part of the story, which just felt very, very warm and welcoming and inviting, which I think you could say that about every single relationship in the Eternals, that it's not the main relationship in Eternals, unfortunately, at least in my opinion, because Fastos and Angelina Jolie, was it? No, it's not Fastos, it's oh my god, forgot the names. I haven't seen the movie in a minute.
Fastos,
apologies.
Fina.
Gilgamesh. Yeah, Gilgamesh. That's what I was thinking. But anyway, clearly I'm not prepared to talk about Eternals right now because I haven't seen it in a minute. So let me stop pretending about it and let's get into the meat and potatoes of it. Yeah, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this episode, which is Spider-Man No Way Home, part 3 of the Homecoming trilogy, the alleged final film of Tom Holland's Spider-Man career. No, it's not. So let's get into it. It's a movie that like there was a lot of hype, lots of expectation, lots of theories coming into it. Like, is Andrew Garfield going to be in it? Is Tobey Maguire going to be in it? Who are going to be the villains? Is this going to be with the multiverse? What's Doctor Strange's role? So many crazy things, which in a way, it was impossible for it to meet expectations. So let's start with you, Josie. Did the movie meet the expectations that, the film set up for itself in the, when it came up to it?
100%.
100%.
Yeah, this was a film that I think a lot of us were anticipating. It was, because not to bring it back to Eternals, but I remember a lot of people being like, we need to destroy the Marvel machine. And I'm like, you chose Eternals to do that? How convenient. And then it's like, you guys are bashing Eternals, saying Marvel needs to stop. We don't need Marvel anymore. But you're all going to go back to the theater to watch No Way Home. And what happened? Yes, that exact same thing. But with the reason, because it was one of the most anticipated films, especially for me, because we all knew what was going to happen. And even then, sitting, of course, spoilers, even then, sitting in the theater.
2 people that haven't seen it,
yeah. I just kept thinking, can you imagine if they don't do it?
That would have been awesome.
And then he shows up, and I'm like, my sweet summer child, you're back. Because one thing that I was very open about when the film came out was that the Amazing Spider-Man films are actually my favorites, and I will not be shamed for it.
Spicy takes continue.
The second one is trash, but I'm a raccoon, and I love me a good garbage can. So I really like both of those, mostly because we all, how people categorize them. Like Tobey Maguire was the best Peter Parker, and Garfield was the best Spider-Man, and then Tom Holland is a little bit of both. So I definitely liked Andrew Garfield. He was very charismatic, and even in this film, I was so surprised that he still, this is not a way to phrase it, but I'm just gonna say out charisma'd everyone.
Right.
So he very much captured attention, and just the way the 3 of them worked together just made me very happy. So this was definitely a film that just managed to meet expectations. It was fan service without being empalagoso.
Yeah.
We managed to do everything well, and it felt justifiable while also just, again, being fan service, and that's fine.
Right.
But there's a good way to do it, and I think they nailed it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think we can call the movie fan service the movie, but it's still done how it needs to be done.
Yeah.
Mo, how about you? What did you think? I know that you also had thoughts coming in. You also are a big fan of Andrew Garfield and the amazing Spider-Man films. So what was that experience?
Best Spidey, still the best Spidey. That's I'm not gonna change.
Amen.
I went in with like MJ's mentality. Don't expect anything, and you won't be disappointed. That's how I went to this movie. I did, to be honest, I was like, well, they're gonna bring everybody back. This like bringing Spider-Man 3, Tobey Maguire, flashbacks of like you brought a lot of things and none of it worked. But the fact that it was well paced, I think I was afraid it was gonna be like too rushed, but it felt so organic. Like, okay, this is what happened, and these are the consequences of Peter's action. And there's no, I mean, there are villains, but there's no the drama is not based on a villain's action. It's based on the consequences of Peter's actions, and I think that's what made the movie work, because it didn't pit like, oh, good versus bad. It just pit like Peter in his own journey to understand what are the repercussions that now that everybody knows that I'm Spider-Man and how I'm going to deal with this. And I think that the movie delivered in all senses, because it not only, it touched on all the nostalgic aspect, that it was forward moving. It also made that opening the avenue of like, the next, what's going to be happening on the next Marvel, while at the same time cutting ties with Spider-Man. I think it achieved what it was meant to do, and it made me cry a few times, and I'm all for a movie that makes me cry. Like, so I think that's all in all. It was I saw it twice in the theaters, and that's very rare that I will see a movie twice. So kudos to the movie. And that ending song, Theresa Magic Number.
It is. That's why we're the Triad of the Force, because three gets things done. No, but I absolutely agree with like both of you. But one of I totally forgot what I was going to say. Now I remember. Well, because one other thing, I was very worried about this goddamn movie. I'm not gonna lie, because I really dug Homecoming and Far From Home. And one of the things that, and especially Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, like I was apprehensive coming into the Spider-Verse, but then I saw it and I was like, okay, can we have more Nicolas Cage, like noir Spider-Man? Because this is just the best thing in the world. And Spider-Pig, and I was like, I'm ready for this multiversal madness. But then when it was announced, right, that Spider-Man 3 might be, the multiverse, and they might bring in Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, I'm like, no, don't do that, guys. Come on, you're just riffing off Into the Spider-Verse. It's not original. Spider-Verse did it, and they're probably gonna do it better than you. There's no way you can stick the landing with these expectations of bringing everyone back.
That being said, I still think, of course, Spider-Verse reigns supreme and multiversal.
Yes,
but they still did a good job.
Right. And that's the thing. And so I every time I doubt Marvel that they're not gonna stick the landing. Just with Endgame, I was like, there's no way they're going to stick the landing with this movie. There's too many things to put together. Boom. We love you 3000. I'm like, God damn it. Yeah, they did it. And so same thing with Spider-Man. Like I was very apprehensive, very nervous about it. And man, and they did it. They hit like every single note that they needed to hit to like make a very engaging and satisfying conclusion to the trilogy, which I thought was kind of interesting for them to conclude it. And I wonder if that's because of the corporate decisions behind the scenes, right? Of Sony kind of wanting to do their own Spider-Verse thing without the MCU. So they're like, okay, let's kind of wrap this up as an MCU story, but then do the multiversal thing so we can take him out into like a branch out, so we can do our own thing. But then if we want to bring him back, we can bring him back, because multiverse, there's no rules anymore. Which I wouldn't be surprised if that's true, because corporate reigns supreme in all these decisions. But Kevin Feige, you gotta give it to him. He's one of these people that's able to maneuver the corporate world and make those decisions work in a story perspective. So kudos, because the movie it did it. It didn't feel bloated. It was the opposite. You kind of wanted more to an extent. It's like, oh, why isn't Matt Murdock in this movie more? Where's Paul Giamatti? Why isn't Paul Giamatti wearing the rhino costume? Come on, bring him. Just bring everybody. Let's just go crazy here. But I really loved it. I did not expect them to go the route with Aunt May that they did, which audibly made me gasp. I like gasped out loud in the movie theater, like, what the hell's happening here? She's that's not happening. Spoiler alert, she died, guys. She died in the most tragic way possible. And she said the words, and I was like, no, she's not gonna say them, because they already established in the other Spider-Man that like he already knows that, you know, in a convoluted way, he said the phrase without having to say it, because Marvel wasn't gonna say it, because he's already said it in the previous 2 trilogies, so he's not gonna say it. And then when she says it, I'm like, floored, absolutely floored. And I think that's one of the important things about this movie and movies like it, which Francis Ford Coppola can suck it, is that they get a reaction out of people. They make people have fun. They make people feel something. They make people invested in characters. And I love going to a screenings that I went to with Spider-Man, where people are engaged.
I remember being so upset, and I've trained myself to stop getting upset at things I see on Twitter, because no vale la pena. But it bothered me a bit at people making fun of that clip where people were like screaming in the theater during Spider-Man No Way Home. And I'm like, well, I did the same thing, so you're making fun of me too. But when they came in, literally like my entire theater just erupted.
Exploded. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So did mine. I was like, oh,
it's
finally.
Like, stop making fun of other people's joy. We're living in a pandemic. Let us be happy.
Yeah, it's like curmudgeons that don't enjoy. Well, they do enjoy things, but they don't want to have people enjoy things the way they want to enjoy them, which is like,
because you know, comic book films, Marvel films are low brow, and it's like stop with your elitismo.
Right. There's a thing to be said about. I think there's 2 conversations to be had about it. It's like, is there a oversaturation of comic book movies in the film industry?
Definitely.
And is like the corporate model of the MCU making it harder for indie films and other dramatic films to have a place in the mainstream for people to access them? And the answer is yes, I think, to those questions. But that is a separate question from, are Marvel movies good or bad? I mean, the corporate structure behind,
they make people happy.
Right. And what's the point of movies, you know? And I mean, some movies make you sad, obviously, but it's to elicit reactions in the human spirit. And I think the Marvel films definitely, especially No Way Home, elicited a lot of reactions in the collective human spirit. One thing though that I was not disappointed by, but worried about coming into No Way Home, and I want to hear your guys' thought about it, was that it would undo a little bit the ending of Far From Home, because Far From Home, obviously, we end with that cliffhanger of Peter Parker and I was gonna say Mephisto. Jesus Christ, the internet has ruined me. Not Mephisto. Jake Gyllenhaal. Exactly. Mephisto's in every Marvel movie now.
He's been there the entire time.
That's gonna be the big reveal. Mephisto was in Iron Man 1.
Yeah, he's the. I wish that they did that. Honestly, that would be great. But it ends with Jake Gyllenhaal revealing Peter Parker's identity to the world, and like, how does Peter reckon with that? You know, as just the whole thing about Spider-Man. It's like Spider-Man's identity is a secret, and every time someone finds out about it, someone gets screwed. So going into No Way Home, I was worried that they would shift focus away from seeing the consequences of that ending and moving it into like, forget about it, and let's go straight into multiversal chaos. And to an extent, they did kind of undo the ending of Far From Home fairly quickly, but I still think that they were able to do it in an elegant way that still managed to address the consequences of that and then lead into the multiversal madness, right? Not to keep using that phrase because I'm hyped for Doctor Strange 2, but what did you guys think about that? Josie, let's start with you. About how they handled the ending of Far From Home leading into No Way Home.
Yeah, I like how they built up to the madness. So we do see what happens at the end, because they start with that. So they start with the end of Far From Home. And then you think it's going to go like to the fan. But then like the beginning is just casual. We see Peter trying to go about his day. Of course, we get that Charlie Cox cameo, which is great. Which I was so mad because I avoided so many spoilers before this film. I didn't see any of the leaks. I didn't see anything. I was like a ninja on the internet and I avoided everything.
Impressive.
And then someone spoiled that Charlie Cox was in the film as soon as I sat down. This little kid behind me was like, I can't wait to see Daredevil in this film. And I'm like, I swear if you're right, I'm gonna be so mad.
Punch a kid. One time to punch kids is acceptable.
We don't punch kids unless they spoil something right before a movie. Pero yeah, I like how, because the beginning was so not monotone, pero it was very simple. And then you start building up slowly to the craziness. So I like how they eased us into that.
Mo, how did you feel about like the ending of Far From Home and how it was, the consequences were handled or not handled in No Way Home?
I think they handle it gracefully. The only thing I would have liked more, and it's just because it's a little bit more J. Jonah Jameson. I would have loved like a little bit more bashing, but you know, I think the fact that they tried to, you know, show us a Peter that wanted a normal life, I think that was important because it sets the stage for the madness that's gonna ensue, and it's you know, it's a callback to our lives. Like we want to have normal lives, but then, you know, at the end of the day, our minds are just full of madness, and we have to. How do we deal with that? And I think it was like it said this like the answer of like, you know, Spider-Man strength comes from their friends, their family. And to see how it leads to Spider-Man being completely alone with nobody, to actually it makes a call back to like, okay, are they playing on like that idea that to be a superhero, like that American dream, you have to be by yourself and you have to abandon everything that you love, and nobody can love you because you're a pariah now. You're
right.
So, you know, it'll be interesting how they eventually play with that or not, because you know, they can just leave it as and have you know another Spider-Man, another friendly Spider-Man, and this another multiverse. But the fact that I love like how the role of Doctor Strange is like, yeah, I'm not gonna help you, but F it, this sounds like fun, like let's go with it. And then getting mad at like, oh, you didn't even make a call to MIT to make sure you could like get it. Like seriously, you asked me to.
I can call
one. Like,
yeah, I did it. I think we all collectively went, you can call back.
Well, I think that's one of the great
rejection.
Things. That's one of the great things is like he's a kid. He doesn't know anything.
Exactly.
So like making all these, he goes into the superpower solution immediately because that's the only thing he knows. He doesn't know that.
I really like that because then we were focusing so much on that mundane aspect of like him getting into college that immediately when he's on his way, then of course Doc Ock appears and we're like, wait, right. The craziness. Let's get in. Let's go. Yes. So they made us, even though we were in, this is why we came to the film, they still made it feel like a surprise. So they still managed to like manage expectations well for the audience.
I thought it was an interesting decision on Marvel's part to kind of spoil. I don't know why. I have a theory of why they did it, but I was surprised that they went all out and just in the marketing, we're just like, okay, here we go. Doc Ock is in it, Green Goblin's in it, everyone's in it except the other Spider-Man. They're not in it. Maybe the bad guys are in it.
They were like, I wonder if they did that. Right. So you don't think about that.
I wonder if they did that because of Alfred Molina just being like, yeah, I'm in the Spider-Man, and they're like,
he's my favorite Spider-Man villain. So I saw him in that trailer and I was like, one ticket, please.
Yes. I was all the tickets. Like I just want a Spider-Man to be Alfred Molina, all of it. Yes, and maybe Spider-Man can talk to him a couple of times, but if it were just Alfred Molina, I would be perfectly fine with it because he
all done.
He was so good in Spider-Man 2, and Spider-Man 2 is my favorite Spider-Man movie. still, I'm sorry, but that's why like I was so happy to see him in this movie, and that's why I liked. I'm not gonna say the twist, but I saw it coming. Well, the movie's already been on everyone's side. The redemption arc and like him actually fighting with the Spider-Man. I saw that and I was so glad that they did it because it's like, yeah, he was always a sympathetic villain and he was always a good guy and he always like liked Peter. So it just makes sense that he's not a villain in this movie. So the fact that they did it that way, I was like, thanks, man. Thanks.
Because it wasn't his fault. His machine just betrayed him.
Right. Exactly. But the scene when like who was it? Was it Tobey Maguire that gives him like the arc reactor, and then he just does the callback to Spider-Man 2. He's like, the power of the sun in my hand.
My hands.
The callbacks in this film like get you teary-eyed because you're like, I mean, again, this watching this film also just made me very emotional because I remember growing up with these films. These are some of the first films I ever saw in theaters. So being like sitting in the theater and like all these people excited, just sitting around, just all of us collectively like going crazy, just reminds me of when I was a kid. I felt like a little kid just watching these films, which was the same way I felt when I watched The Last Jedi in theaters and like Rogue One. Because like you grow up watching these films and you're like,
I'm getting all excited again just thinking about it. It's so
the only thing missing was the national anthem, the Pinta tu vida.
Oh yeah! Oh my god! Yes, for everyone that doesn't know, the Puerto Rican movie theaters, it's basically a monopoly. It's like an AMC, but worse because there's no other movie theaters. Basically, it's called Caribbean Cinemas, and there used to be a commercial for this paint company, local paint company called Harris Paint, that played for like, I don't know, probably 20 years, to the point that it just became part of the pop culture in Puerto Rico, where everyone just knew it by heart. And it's argued that most people know that anthem more than our actual national anthem. So it's fantastic.
I mean, it's perfect. It's like, it is. Paint your life with the colors of my land.
And it describes, and then it goes color by color, telling you what that color is and what it represents.
Yeah, like yellow for mango, blue the adoquines, which is like Old San Juan. White for coconut, and we're like, red for yes.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. So we'll probably leave a link in the description below so you can check it out for yourself. Because Puerto Ricans do it better. That's absolutely true. You give us, I mean, there was that superhero movie that came out not too long ago. I haven't seen it yet, but everyone says it's the most amazing thing ever. Yes.
I heard it was so bad, but people were like so enjoying it because it just goes, it unapologetically goes hard.
It's like a Bollywood film from what I've seen in the descriptions for that movie.
I signed up to get a DVD because it was playing in Puerto Rico while I was over here, so I still haven't been able to see it. And I don't think it's in theaters anymore. So I'm like, send me that DVD.
It's not, what you're saying, it's not going to be on Netflix? What?
Zack Enfrentamiento Mortal o algo así.
It's a terrible name to begin with. So it's just like everything about it's perfect, basically. But kind of going back into the callbacks into Spider-Man, to the old films that kind of make you feel excited again. One of them for me, obviously all the Doc Ock stuff, but one of them for me was definitely, and Mo, maybe you'll sympathize with this because I think we've talked about this for a long time, even before No Way Home, was the meme, like you were saying, the memification of like all the Spider-Man stuff. And for me, the one thing was Green Goblin when he's in the little prison, and then all of a sudden he looks at Peter and he's like, "Oh, I'm something of a scientist myself." I'm like, they did it.
Yes,
they did it
as
again.
they should. Everyone screamed in my theater when he said that. We were like, ah!
Same. And that is, again, it's just joy. It's just happiness.
But that's the beautiful. Sorry.
No, yeah, lo the fan service, because it was good fan service.
Exactly. That it's beautiful. Like it's not made. It wasn't forced upon you. Just opportune moment that hey, I can just insert this meme and it's gonna work, and it makes people laugh, and that's what counts. That works.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where they knew their audience, and sometimes we just have to admit, like, this is made for a specific audience, and they know their audience. The audience was happy, so I think they did a good job.
Yeah, which again doesn't detract from the quality of the movie, because I think the movie like visually stunning. I think it's the best looking of the Tom Holland films.
I think one of my favorite scenes that everyone was talking about for a while was the Spidey sense scene, because we had never seen Spidey senses be portrayed that way. He's just walking around the apartment and that tension just keeps going up. It's like, those are rookie numbers. We got to pump them up. And you're just there with him, just by the throat. Marvel has you by the throat, and Sony too. And then Willem Dafoe just goes Dafoe mode.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And it was
he goes
just
all
really
lighthouse
good.
on everybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the lighthouse changed Dafoe's face. Like you love like how the cycle will come out. Like what a talent!
So
what a
good.
talent!
And that's the thing. Like he's very good in the movie, not just because he's Willem Dafoe, but also because you can just tell that everyone's having a blast making that movie. They're having so much fun. Especially like I kind of felt like Alfred Molina and Willem Dafoe specifically. We're just having like a blast finally, like having scenes together and stuff. Because you could, I mean, obviously, Willem Dafoe, Green Goblin has like evil face and stuff.
They were all having fun. They were all having fun. Like,
especially Jamie Foxx too, because Jamie Foxx
was having fun.
I get to look. I don't get to be blue. I get to look like me, who's a very handsome man, and actually be a cool villain instead of be.
No, yeah, and everything, like, they still stuck with his motivations from the other film, but they vamped it up. They gave him a more righteous purpose. You could relate to his character even more now because it didn't feel like cartoonish. They made him a respectable villain, which I really liked.
And in doing so, it still gave him the stupid comic book accurate costume.
Yeah.
And it still worked. That's one of the things. It's like, wait, so the blue thing that's supposed to be more grounded looked ridiculous, but the comic accurate hat thing actually worked better. It was like, good job, Marvel. I mean, and the Marvel side MCU keep doing what you're doing. I'm not so sure what's happening with Morbius or whatever the hell that movie with
I'm
Jared
choosing
Leto
to
is,
ignore
but
it.
it feels like, what?
But
Jared
also
Leto also
Sandman.
needs a vacation. Just
I was not expecting Sandman to be in this one, which I know he was in the trailer, but I just didn't expect them to give him as much time as they did. And I really liked it because I remember when I was young and I saw Spider-Man 3 and just feeling so sad for his character. So I loved what they did for him here.
My question about, and I want to hear your guys' reaction to this, my question about Sandman and Lizard actually was that for me, those two characters felt that they were reusing old lines from like the previous movies and that they didn't actually have like those actors kind of come back. So that's why for me, some of those, especially Lizard, some of those things kind of felt that took me out of the moment because they felt like not a recreation, but repurposed footage from like those films and inserted there, which was kind of like off-putting for me. I don't know how you guys felt about it.
I didn't feel it as much with Sandman again, mostly because I have that empathy for his character. So at least like story-wise, I liked where they took it. But with Lizard, I noticed it more because I guess I didn't care that much about his character. Yeah. And like you notice, it's a little bit lazy because especially when they give him the antidote, it's the same exact sequence from that film. So you're just wondering like, what was the point? You guys are giving us so much here, then why did you include it? But also like it was necessary, but it's lazy.
It's lazy, yeah.
Yeah, it felt like bad Photoshop when in that it's like a movie with such amazing VFX, and all of a sudden like Lizard just like looked like a copy paste there.
A JPEG. Someone put a JPEG on the screen.
Like
maybe they'll say didn't render well coming to the next multiverse.
But it's interesting that you say that because I have never seen Amazing Spider-Man 2. I will own up to that. It's just like I never bothered. Pero I did really enjoy actually Amazing Spider-Man, the first one. I thought it was a very good reboot. I think they did a good job. And I did actually like Lizard as a villain. I think it was a good foe, especially because of his motivations, right? He wasn't just a
But I like how they called it out. Like, you wanted to turn people into lizards? So he's like, yeah, why? What's wrong?
Nothing.
But it's his motivation. So it's his motivation. So they made fun of it without totally canceling it or pulling back on it, because then that would just be insulting to the Amazing Spider-Man films. Like, they exist, acknowledge them. You can make fun of them, but There was a lot of good that came with that. People like. I remember when the first Amazing Spider-Man came out, my theater was full. I saw it at Plaza America, and it was just wild. It was along the same lines of No Way Home because it was just a lot of people. I went with a lot of Spider-Man friends. Like they love like Spider-Man's their favorite superhero and everything, and a lot of them just really liked Andrew Garfield because they were like, oh yes, this is how it's supposed to be, this is how because this is how it is in the comics, he's supposed to build his own webbing, blah blah, which I like how they also talked about that in the film where they were like, wait, you don't make your own webbing? He's like, yeah.
Do you ever have blockage? That was
the existential crisis. Oh, been through that too. Oh, and the back cracking. I'm like, these guys are just having fun on set.
They're happy guys. It was a beautiful, like when it's like, I love you guys, and they were like, okay, like.
No, also when Tobey tells Andrew's Peter, like, you're amazing. I think all of us that love his Peter, like Andrew's Peter, we all collectively want thanks.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, but obviously that was very self. I mean, it was kind of like, okay, the Amazing Spider-Man films, you're amazing.
I loved it. I was like, of course, that perfect wording. I didn't mind it. I was like, yes.
No, neither did I. I mean, it was.
Yeah, I was like, this is delicious.
It was really on the nose, but perfect. Well, you were going to say something. Sorry.
No, I was kind of like a callback to what Josie said, that they even Andrew Garfield made like that self-depreciating, like, oh, I'm not even the best Spider-Man, like, and then like I think some other villain was like, I'm not even gonna bother with you because you're not even like the cool one anymore. It's like, I know, I'm sorry, like, but like with such honesty, I think like it was like they brought out that emotion, like they were so self-aware, like, and just enjoying themselves, and you can see that, you can just see that they were just enjoying themselves. And I think it shows, like, their acting.
But it's telling of the storytelling as well of the writers, putting this movie together, that they're able to kind of redeem, to use a word, the Amazing Spider-Man films, because obviously there's a lot of obviously people love the Andrew Garfield performance, but the movies ended with a whimper in a sense, and critically they weren't well received, and there was a lot of loose threads that were never completed. So the fact that this movie is able to pick up other movies of a different franchise, not a different franchise, a different universe, and be able to complete some of the journeys that Peter Parker was taking, especially with that scene with MJ when he rescues her. And which, like, in the trailer, I was like, that's gotta be Andrew Garfield rescuing her, right?
Yeah, I remember I tweeted it and people were like, no. And I'm like, it's gonna happen. It needs to happen.
It has to.
it has to. And
that's when I cried.
Crap.
Mo, you were talking about crying. That's when I cried. He saved
I cried there too. I was like, you did it.
But the thing is, it wasn't him saving her. It was like the face he does when like he has her in his arms and he's like, oh, I finally did it. And I was able to save an MJ. Oh, got all emotional all of a sudden. But yeah, but seeing it in the theater and everyone also being like, everyone just gasping when like Peter Green Goblin's glider just takes them off, and then so what's gonna happen? Then when it shoots back to Andrew Garfield and everyone just cheering and going insane, it was like the best experience.
Again, good fan service.
Yes,
because they justified it. It wasn't just because there was a lot of things happening there. Because again, Peter is going to save her, like Tom Holland, but then that happens. So what has to happen next? And then he comes in. So it's justified. And even though, yes, it is fan service, but it's something we want to see because again, the way that Andrew's Peter, just that way that trilogy was treated was so sad. And
that it wasn't even a trilogy.
Yeah.
We'll get to that because it might be.
Yeah, because then this one for Tom Holland feels like his origin trilogy, and now supposedly we're gonna see him come into his own. Like now his suit won't have technology, so we might still see him in the MCU. So this entirely, like this, all of this was his origin story, and then it was also a nice conclusion to Andrew Garfield's Peter, which I really liked because there is a lot of that we get filled in. Like Gwen died, and he kind of went dark. I don't want to see that. I want to see his Batman era.
Emo Garfield there.
Emo Garfield.
Oh yeah. It's interesting. We'll get to Andrew Garfield in a little bit, but I want to like make a point here to say that all of the discourse that I've seen online about this movie, besides the Tom Holland hero's journey with the trilogy concluding, and obviously the villains, but what everyone else focuses on is the Andrew Garfield narrative. Not so much Tobey Maguire, which I find interesting because he was like the original Spider-Man. He had his trilogy, and he's the classic one that everyone looks back to, and somehow
looking like a youth pastor.
You said youth pastor.
I love that comment. They said that. I was like, oh my god,
so true.
But that's it, right? Like, is it me, or like or does it feel that like Tobey's presence in the movie has kind of like been, I'm not gonna say ignored, but not as fiercely discussed.
I saw a lot of love for him, definitely, because he is like, again, we grew up with him. It was Spider-Man. The Spider-Man films were the first superhero films I ever saw in theaters. So there was that love and appreciation for him. I think it just because also Andrew is doing Tick Tick Boom. He did Eyes of Tammy Faye, so he was like the it guy in 2021. So I think that affects it too. But also, I think it was just we didn't realize how starved we were for a proper conclusion to his Peter. Because if you're a Spider-Man fan, you know how much he genuinely loved playing the character. And I think that evokes some emotion in people. Because he was so sad when it was done, but he was still so supportive of Tom Holland and where the story was going. And you could tell he was so happy to be there. So I think that's might be what connect with so many people. Also, the fact that Tobey was just left alone the entire time during promotion. And then everyone kept asking Andrew Garfield, like, are you in the movie? So there was also that aspect. I think it has to do with a lot of the promotion for the film, with Andrew Garfield denying ever being in the film. And
right, because Tobey wasn't promoting anything, so he wasn't.
Yeah, Tobey, like that was the thing. Tobey is so low key that I think that's why there are so many aspects beyond just Andrew's Peter or the people that love his character. I really do think that it's also like he had Tammy Faye, he had Tick Tick Boom, he was doing promotion for those films, so of course they were bothering him about No Way Home. So I think that influences a lot because he's the first person you think of during promotions for this film.
Which is like I've seen online a bunch of people saying that he deserves the Oscar just for like his denials of Spider-Man.
Not the werewolf.
So good for
good. I loved him.
Exactly. Or people are now realizing that Andrew Garfield was always the best Spider-Man.
Which, coming back into that, do we think now that, I mean, I'm sure that these talks have happened in corporate, and now that like Andrew Garfield is kind of back into the public consciousness of like, not only because he's a great actor who's in a lot of good movies, in a row suddenly, but because now he's been in Spider-Man and like having the conclusion of his journey kind of piggybacking into No Way Home, do we think that there is space for an Amazing Spider-Man 3? Do we think it's possible? And what we want to see from it? Mo, let's start with you, since I know you're like a big Amazing Spider-Man fan.
I really, like what Josie was saying, like we're missing that conclusion. And, part of it was delivered here. We see, but there's still like development on the character that needs to be like played out. And the fact that they called it as like, oh, the least like, oh, you haven't gone to space, you haven't fought any aliens. So I only fought like a Russian with like rhino suit. But that's what Spider-Man has been all about. It's a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. It's usually saving the neighbors, the family, the inspiring others to portray that. And it's either we go for one last Andrew Garfield, or we take the advice that Electro kind of like implied, like, oh, you're from Queens, you're helping everybody. I thought you were gonna be black.
I thought you were black, yeah. Which Miles Morales, come on, give
Miles,
it to us.
Miles Morales. So either of those stories, I will be glad to follow up. Either you bring real life Miles Morales, make a live action, or finish up with the Andrew Garfield trilogy, at least one more chance. Or but I don't know what whatever marketing we saw. Like, I know that now not Spawn, Venom. They have the same character design. Venom is also now coming back to MCU, so I don't know what's that going to imply. If that's just gonna be like the next main villain for Tom Holland, or what's gonna happen, because then I guess I haven't seen the Venom ones, so I don't know which universe that Venom comes from.
I saw the first one for you. You're fine. You're okay.
But
love them. They're my favorite rom-coms.
But
well, you look at it from that perspective.
Then Josie, which universe does this Venom come from? Do we know? Or
I don't know, because I thought with the ending of No Way Home that he went back to the Sony universe.
Yes, that's what I understood too. Like he was.
But is that the Andrew Garfield universe, or is that the Tobey Maguire?
Andrew Garfield universe, I think it would be.
Okay.
Right?
So then,
I don't think they've established like where
since it's Sony, I'm assuming that it would be like anything that has to do with the Sony property.
So I wonder if that's gonna be their next approach. Like have Venom will be
he's the link to
the link, the web between the Spider-Verses.
I see what you did there. Josie, what do you think about Andrew Garfield coming back in a potential Amazing Spider-Man 3? What are the possibilities for it, and what would you like to see?
Clearly, I love him. I will gush forever. But I don't want to see another Amazing Spider-Man film unless like I'm fully convinced like they have a good story or something like that. Because I think everything they did in No Way Home was perfect to end his arc and to do justice to that part of his career where he was Spider-Man. But I just want to see, I want Miles Morales. I want Miles Morales now. So that's the next thing I would love to see in the Spideyverse.
Do we think that Spider-Man should, obviously this is not up to Marvel, unfortunately, because they don't own the rights. But do we want to see Spider-Man in the Spider-Verse, in the Sonyverse, so to speak? Or do we want to keep it within the MCU? Or do we think like Spider-Man could benefit actually from taking a little break from the MCU and kind of living on his own? What do you guys think about that? Starting with you, Josie. Sorry.
I think that's where they want to take it. I think they want to give Spider-Man his own story now, which I think is what we've been craving from the beginning. Because a lot of people, that was the main complaint, because each film it was like either Tony Stark or then it was Doctor Strange. So it would be nice to see him on his own, especially I think that's what they're leading up to right now since nobody can remember him. But I like him in the MCU. I like to see how that connects because we saw Tom Holland Spider-Man in the MCU. It's kind of hard to picture him elsewhere, but I wouldn't be opposed to him maybe going to the Sonyverse, let's call it that.
Yep,
with Jared Leto.
I don't know, just keep him with Tom Hardy. Which I thought we were gonna get Tom Hardy's Venom in No Way Home, and I was like, it's just an end credit scene. This is insulting.
I think it would have gotten too busy if like Venom had just
I wanted
Miles.
I wanted Tom Hardy. Give me a 4-hour film.
Take that, Francis Ford Coppola. You're not the only one that can make long films. But I definitely want Miles Morales. They should not whitewash him, of course. He's Afro-Caribbean, so
no, I'm still upset con America Chavez.
Give him black because that's important. But I mean, obviously we got him in Into the Spider-Verse, but a live action Miles Morales would not be a bad thing for sure. But would that Miles Morales live within the MCU? Again, it's like now with all the multiverse stuff, it's like, does he live in his own universe that detached from the MCU or the Sonyverse? Like, where would Miles Morales live? I think he would want to live somehow in the MCU. I think because
I think he can exist there. I was reading one of his comics the other day because I've never read a Miles Morales comic. One of my coworkers borrowed one from the library, and I was like, "Can I borrow it?" And it was an issue where he's fighting like this demon from space, and I think Yeah, it was a literal demon. And
Mephisto.
Like Mephisto's son or something like that, I think it was. I'm not even joking. It was like Prince Demon, whatever. And he's fighting alongside the Avengers, and he's like kicking butt while the Avengers are like getting their asses handed back to them. And Miles is like, yeah, I'm Miles Morales.
It's Puerto Rican. Puerto Ricans do it.
Yeah.
But I think the MCU is like the better place, because if I recall correctly, and I could be absolutely wrong, so please correct me if I'm wrong. In Homecoming, the first Spider-Man of the Tom Holland ones, oh my God, I forgot his name. From Atlanta. Jesus Christ.
Donald Glover.
Thank you. Donald Glover is in the film, and his character implies that he has a cousin, and I think his character is actually Miles Morales' cousin. I think if
that he has a nephew in Queens.
A nephew, yeah.
So that would make him I'm blanking on the name, the Crawler. Sorry.
So technically, Miles Morales already is implied in the MCU.
They set it up. They set it up in that first film.
And Marvel keeps pushing Young Avengers. I don't know if Miles Morales is part of the Young Avengers. I don't know.
I mean, he does have a couple issues with like comic book issues where he's in the same story with America Chavez. So
who is now going to appear in Doctor Strange 2 and the Multiverse of Madness. So I think we've talked a lot and gushed a lot about Spider-Man No Way Home. So why don't we move into like our expectations now, moving a little bit into the future. Obviously we can't talk that much because movies aren't out, but the trailer for Doctor Strange 2 dropped fairly recently, and I think it's fair to say it blew our collective consciousness because of its implications of maybe tying into apparently the What If animated show, and like obviously all those consequences of the multiverse in Spider-Man, America Chavez coming in, and Scarlet Witch. So it's a lot, and obviously by Sam Raimi, director of Spider-Man 1 and 2. So
also,
very excited.
Esta tipa, British Captain America. Se me está olvidando el nombre.
Oh, British Captain America.
Her shield. Peggy Carter. Captain Carter. Her shield was in the poster.
Yeah.
Right. Someone said that it was Captain Britain, and I'm like, why would they put Captain Britain if they already have Captain Carter? That doesn't.
I mean, if they're already alluding to the connections with the What If show.
Yeah.
Come on, give us Captain Carter.
Exactly. Mo, why don't we start with you? What did you think of that trailer? Did you watch it?
I think I did. I mean, I saw the end credit at the movie, and I saw.
That was a teaser. That wasn't like.
That was a teaser, and then the one that came in the Super Bowl. I think I saw it. Yes. I'm all for it. The crazier shit goes, the more excited I get. So I want to see how they delve into it. At this point, I have no doubt that it is the What Ifs. Like breaking into like the whole multiverse. I mean, Loki already established that the multiverse is already free for all. And now with Doctor Strange breaking the barriers and making it all access, I have no doubt that is probably so it's probably gonna be, again, the team up of like making the team. Okay, let's get Wanda, let's get Doctor Strange. Probably by the end of the movie, you have Professor X, you have somehow Ned will gain more powers and become the next Supreme Sorcerer.
Filipino power.
I guess Harkness is probably gonna be in this, and I'm ready.
Yes. I didn't even think of her.
Chavez.
And yes, you know what? Bring back. I wanna see the Gambit. Bring the Gambit back.
Channing Tatum as Gambit.
Yeah.
Please, Lord, no. If the Lord exists, the one mercy I want from him is to not have Channing Tatum play Gambit. Please give him away. Just have him do 23 Jump Street. I'll watch that, but I will not watch him play Gambit. Josie, what did you think of that trailer? What are your expectations for Doctor Strange 2?
I like the trailer. I really like that they said the word nightmare, and immediately I was like, nightmare? Come on to you. Because I a lot of the theories were that since Mephisto is out the door for now, a lot of people were like, oh, the main villain is going to be Nightmare for this film. But then they're doing like evil Doctor Strange versus regular Doctor Strange. So we'll see what happens. I feel like we're in for a lot of surprises.
Do we think that the evil Doctor Strange, I don't know if it's been confirmed or not, if the evil Doctor Strange we see in the trailer, the same evil Doctor Strange from What If, or are they different evil Doctor Stranges? Because he doesn't have like the, pointy cape and stuff. So I'm like, are you the same? Different but same, but still different.
But I'm excited.
Very much so.
Yes. Could be all. Could be both.
Why not both? Right.
And some people were alluding that I didn't see it in the trailer, but some people were like, yes, there were shots of like the zombie Avengers. And I was like, where?
Yeah. But I think it's different zombie Avengers. I don't think it's the same zombies from What If. But yeah, there was a zombie Wanda and a zombie Doctor Strange, which was doing like the Hindu thing with all the arms.
But then I want to see Peter with the Doctor Strange cape, because that was my favorite part of What If.
I mean, at this point, it's just like, hey, that's everything. Let's do it. Let's
kid, you owe me. All of this is because I tried to help you.
Yeah, it's like, I'm gonna make everyone remember you now. Don't worry, but you have to help. But the thing that blew my mind, and even though it's not been confirmed, even though it's confirmed because Patrick Stewart did a terrible job at denying that he's in the trailer, because I'm like,
he's not Andrew Garfield. Nobody can do it like Andrew Garfield.
His excuse was so bad. He's like, I was watching a football game. How could be me? I'm like, dude, because what? That doesn't make sense. We recorded it before.
Amo. That sounds like such a
Patrick Stewart.
Un abuelito.
Yeah. He's like, Grandpa, are you okay? You need your medicine. I'll get you some tea with some whiskey. Don't worry, Grandpa. But when I heard that voice, we should tell him the truth. I'm like, oh my God, they did it. They brought him back. The power of money. I can't believe it. After he said that he was not gonna come back and that his swan song was Logan, Professor X is back in the fold. But do we think that this is the Professor X from the X-Men universe that we previously saw on Fox, or is this some variant of Professor X? What do we think? Mo.
Got me there. I think it could be more Fox, but definitely not the Logan one. The Logan one is gone. Some people were alluding to like, maybe it's before Logan. And I'm like, maybe. I don't know.
I think it makes more sense for it to be like a variant Professor X.
Yeah, it could be a new one, or unless they want to play again with that fan service since it works so well in No Way Home, just to be able to make references.
And this is a great way to, since we all got faked out on WandaVision with a fake Pietro, this is a great way to actually bring real Pietro from the X-Men universe into the MCU now, and actually not be, what was his name? I forgot his stupid name in the WandaVision show.
Ralph Boner.
Ralph Boner. Yeah, stupid name, but I love it. Jesus Christ. But yeah, Doctor Strange, very excited for that. We'll see when it comes out. It's a great time for cinema. But before we conclude everything, I know, Josie, you can't really talk much about it because the review embargoes are still up, and this is going to release before that, so you can't really give us a review of a film. But you have a final spicy take before we wrap up No Way Home. What was it that you wanted to share with us?
So as much as I've been gushing about No Way Home, I was recently bestowed the honor of being able to go to an advanced press screening for The Batman. And I enjoyed that film surprisingly more than No Way Home. And I love No Way Home, so I hope that gets you excited.
That is so thrilling so that means that there's a multiverse is happening and all the Batmen are gonna be in the Batman. You heard it here first.
Yeah, it's Batfleck
confirmed. The Batfleck is coming back. Even the camp, they're gonna resurrect the campy Batman from the 60s. He's coming back too.
All of them, they're gonna point at each other.
Yes. And Jack Nicholson's also gonna be the Joker in this one, because you can't have a Batman movie without the Joker.
Honestly, but props to both the studios that keep trying to make these characters work. Because I remember when Spider-Man, when they started doing Amazing Spider-Man, that I was like, is this going to turn into a Batman thing? Because we keep getting different iterations of Batman. And I never understood why. I should have guessed money. But if one works, why do you keep trying to make new ones, like resetting it? And then the same thing would happen with Spider-Man. So props to them to finally getting to a place where I feel like they genuinely just started doing it for, in Marvel's case, for the sake of the audience, just to make them happy. And in this new Batman with Robert Pattinson, it just feels like for the sake of telling a good story.
Right. Yeah. And it's Matt Reeves, and I loved his Planet of the Apes films. So like, I'm very, very, very excited. It seems like he's going to be, let's see if my take is accurate to what you saw in the cinema recently. That he's going to pull a little Ryan Johnson on us and he's going to be like the Last Jedi of Batman films. Maybe? No? Maybe? We'll just have to wait and see.
You have to wait and see.
I do like that the trailers are heavily implying that there's going to be this Batman's going to double down on the romance. It's like, yes, Batman fucks. Batman falls in love. And Zoe Kravitz is here. And we're not going to shy away from
everything in this film for everyone. If you're a romance lover, there is romance. If you love true crime, if you love mystery, if you like good fights.
You heard it here first, Raylos. If you like Ben and Ray, you're going to like Batman and Catwoman. But yeah, so this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much, Josie, for joining us. As always, like we said, you're like the fourth Beatle or the fifth Beatle. I forget how many Beatles there are. So you're that extra one for us. You're our fourth Triad of the Force member.
Very honored.
Always happy to have you around. But before we wrap up, why don't you we talked a little bit right at the beginning of the show of some of the places that where you're currently working at, but why don't you tell people where they can find you, where they can expect to see some of your movie reviews, and where they can find you on the socials.
Yeah, you can definitely find me at the Josie Marie on Twitter and Letterboxd. Also, you can follow Film Posers at Film Posers basically everywhere.
And we will definitely leave links to that in the description below, so it's easier for you to find them. Please make sure to find and support. These are really good people. Puerto Ricans doing really good work, so we always have to support each other, especially when the work is good. So please go ahead and support that. But with that, we have been Triad of the Force. Thank you so much for listening to us. You can find us as well on basically all the social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, unfortunately Facebook, because you have to do it. You can also find us on podcasts, and we're pod chasers. We are Apple, Spotify. I don't know if Amazon, maybe not, who knows, but search it. Maybe you'll find us. You'll search at Triad of the Force, and you're going to be sure to find us, YouTube as well. And if you really support the channel, you really like what we're doing and would like to support somehow, we don't have a Patreon, but we do have a merch store on TeePublic where you can find a bunch of designs that we design ourselves. They're not branded. So if you like something and don't want to actually support us, but buy one of our designs, that's okay too. We get a very small profit margins. So please keep that in mind. Every dollar helps. But with that, thank you so much. We have been Triad of the Force. May the Force be with you.